Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the IDG Partner Gathering, a very special IDG Partner Gathering as it is also the 3-year IDG anniversary. Think back 3 years in time, May 2021. Where were you in your life? What happened back then? And how do you even remember? Is it that you have a visual calendar in your heads right now? Or are you thinking of specific people? Is it places that help you remember? Or is it specific events? Today, we are here to celebrate an important event that happened 3 years ago. And maybe back then, many of us didn't even know that it was important back then. On the 12th of May, 2021, the IDG framework that was co-created by several thousand scientists, HR specialists, sustainability specialists, was for the first time presented as an open source to the world. Is it a framework of 23 skills that are supposed to help us deal with our most pressing global challenges? And today we celebrate its 3-year anniversary. And you know, celebrations can be loud, there can be fireworks and crackers and everything is buzzing. But celebrations can also be a moment when we give each other a present that is quite rare. Maybe it's more of a pause. Maybe it's a break, a moment, a space in between. Today, we want to take a moment to look back and appreciate all the ones who've been on that journey with us in those 3 years and who have co-created the Inner Development Goals movement with us. Today, we want to look at the present and for a moment just feel where we are right now. We want to be proud, we want to be grateful, maybe also a bit self-critical. And today we also want to take a moment to look into the future and to feel the ambition, the excitement, and the joy that those visions can bring. And for that, we have invited 2 very special visionaries to help us guide us from the past into the future. And to start that journey today, I would invite you to arrive with me here in the present right here and right now. My name is Katrina. It is my great pleasure to guide you through this wonderful event today. And maybe just to check, is there anyone who has not been to an IDG, either partner event or a general IDG event so far? Who is here for the first time? Wonderful, welcome. It's good to have you. Most of the ones who have been with us know that we usually start our gatherings, our event with a moment of arrival. You probably all come from all sorts of different settings. You might have all sorts in your heads, but mostly we're either in the past and kind of still thinking about the things that happened, or in the future and thinking about all the things that we need to do before we can finally go to bed tonight. So the moment to arrive is really for us to anchor ourselves in the present. And it also helps us to just calm down our nervous system so we can pay a bit more attention and remember what will happen here better. And in the end, it makes your time worthwhile. So a way how we like to start doing that is just remember that we have a body. And maybe we haven't consciously moved our body for a while. We've probably been sitting in offices or at desks and haven't even enjoyed the beautiful place here. So maybe just sit up straight for a second and start rolling your shoulders slightly, ever so slightly, that you feel this tension in your shoulder blades. And I'm sure your shoulders are going to be very grateful for that moment of present. And then you can also roll your head a bit if you want to. Also with this, just be very gently with yourself. Just do it in a way that feels comfortable for you. And if you're comfortable with it, you can also stretch a bit more. And if you want, you can even yawn. This is now the moment where the person on stage invites you to yawn. If you do that later on, you know that's not that pleasant for me, but it's okay. And as we're already concentrating on the body, let's also take a moment for our breath If you want, you can close your eyes for that. And I would invite you to just listen to the sounds that you can hear. Might be very subtle sounds, might be something a bit, to just arrive a bit more in your body, how you're sitting right now, and then just get to your breath and pay attention to its rhythm. Is it fast? Is it slow? Just very gently observe your breath. And then I invite you to turn your attention to your mental horizon. Just imagine your thoughts as a horizon over the sea, and then just let yourself be informed. How does that horizon look today? Is it stormy and lots of different thoughts and blizzard likes? Is it a bit cloudy? Is it gray? How does it feel? Is it maybe calm, sunny, quite enjoyable? And just see what comes to you. If thoughts come, that's fine. You can just let them pass by. Let yourself be informed with whatever comes to you. And in the second step, I invite you to pay attention to your ocean of emotions. So if you imagine your emotions like an ocean, and you can look at the surface, you can also dive deep into the water if you want to. How does it feel? Is it rough? Is it cold? Is it a chilly breeze? Is it moving fast, or is it clear and calm? You can move very gently through it as it is embracing you warmly. Just let your ocean of emotions embrace you and see how that feels. And then the third step, I invite you to turn your attention towards your body and go deep into the depth of your body. Again, let your body inform you. There's nothing you have to look for, nothing you have to avoid either. What are the first things that you observe? Is it something that hurts, that wants your special attention? Or is it an area in your body that actually feels quite comfortable, quite warm? Maybe it expands a bit. Maybe it has a specific color, a tonality, a flavor to it. And for a moment, I invite you to let all those three areas be there at once. Your thoughts, your emotions, and your body. And see how that works for you. Is there any information that comes from those three areas that reaches you now? And if not, that is also fine. Just let it be the way it is right now. And then you can very slowly and gently take 2 more deep breaths and find your way back to this beautiful room at Fotografiska in Stockholm on the 14th of May, 2024 at around 3:15, and to the present. And as you arrive here, you can also have a look around who else is here, in case you haven't done so yet. Just look at the faces, the ones you know, the ones you don't know, so that we can arrive here for those 2 hours together. Thank you. Feels like we are here together in the present moment now. So just a quick check-in also to see specifically maybe the ones who are here for the first time, who else is here in the room. So maybe let's just quickly start with where you're from. Who are the people, and maybe start with this, who are not from Stockholm? Oh, quite a few. All right, then let's do the other way around as well. Who are the Stockholmers? Oh God, we love your place. It's so beautiful here today. Sunny in Stockholm, even more appreciated. Who are the Swedes who are here with us today? Yes, still quite a lot. I will probably get different answers from the online participants as well. Outside of Sweden, Europe. Still quite a lot. Yes, like oh, UK. Yeah, but we still count you in, you know. Europe. Anyone from outside Europe here? Oh, yes, but you reside in Stockholm, as far as I know. Yeah, this is kind of, it's again, it's like, oh, yes, no, we never quite know. Hello also to our online audience. I assume you might be a bit more international, so we'd also be really curious to hear where are you joining in from, and maybe just give us a bit of a sensory expression as well. What can you hear? What can you smell where you're at? And I'm not sure, maybe we can even see them. I think some of you might even join via video, so we can quickly wave hello to you as well. In the meantime, also, how long have you all been on the IDG journey? Is there anyone who's really feeling like this is my first touch point with the IDGs? I've recently just figured it out. I happen to be in Fotografiska, so I stumbled into this event. Okay, no, right. Everyone else who's been like maybe for a year or so, so you're kind of getting to know the IDG still, you've been with us for about a year. It's like, oh, okay, yeah. Anything more than a year, 1, 2 years. 2 years, okay, I've got more hands. And then we seem to have a lot of people who've been with us longer, 3 years or even longer. Yeah. Well, that's a good thing about an anniversary here as well. Oh, and I do see some online people. Hello, good to have you with us. It's always confusing, like where am I waving and where do I see myself? Okay, I do manage somehow. Daniel, are there any comments from our online audience as well, where they are, how they're joining us today?
The weather is very sunny around the world. So in Norway, there is sun. In Switzerland, people are coming from a beautiful lake and mountains. Water from the Netherlands, northern Germany, also sunny.
This turns into weather forecast now.
Scotland
weather all
sunny.
over Europe, sunny today. Enjoy.
And listen to this, rainy Barcelona.
Oh, rainy Barcelona, and that from you. You might have to change your email signature. Rainy greetings from Barcelona. Wonderful. Good to have you all with us. And before we get started with the stuff that we've prepared for you as well, we'd also want to give you the chance to check in a bit with each other. And the way how we do that is, I still have this with me, and I actually do carry this around with me. Does anyone know what this is? And the ones who were at the IDG summit, it's like, yes, we do know. Do you want to tell the others what it is? Frederick, go ahead.
It's each of the 23 skills have a symbol.
Each of the 23 skills, I just tell the online audience as well, have a symbol.
I don't know.
Anyone knows which one that is? Almost. Is it the same? No, it's not the same. No, authenticity. Yes. I've been carrying this around with me since the summit. And I also wonder, like, how do I develop my own authenticity? And how can I continue doing that? You know, standing on a stage is not always that easy. Like, maybe you don't like my jokes. Maybe I shouldn't even be that authentic on a stage. So I think all of these skills are an invitation for us to keep working on them, to keep developing them. So the first invitation for you would be to get together in small groups of 3 people. And you see this beautiful framework on your table. And the first column is the column being. So very quickly, just choose one IDG that resonates with you in the section of being. One IDG that you feel like you would like to develop a bit more. And maybe what would it change in your life, in your work life, if that skill would play a bigger role in your life? And I would invite you to start just exchanging very briefly to make this simpler. Get together in groups of 3. The person with the longest hair starts, so you don't have to talk about this. I will give you a signal when we jump to the next person. So the first person can just talk, and the others just give pure attention and listen. And to the online audience, we invite you to go into very quick breakout sessions to do the same thing. In case you don't find someone, we're also here to help you group up. All right, go ahead and enjoy. And it might also be a good opportunity for you to hold on to this skill that you just chose. You will have had good reasons for it, and maybe just take it with you as a kind of token that you keep with yourself in your head for the rest of the week, and just observe how it comes back, in which situations you might think of it, and how you might just pay a bit more attention to that specific skill. Who of you is familiar with Bob Kegan's immunity to change? Quite a few. Not too surprising, as he's a dear contributor to the Inner Development Goals as well. And the immunity to change basically talks about how we humans try to avoid change at all costs. Individual change, personal transformation is just hard. And we find a lot of good reasons to postpone it to next week, next month, another life, because now it just doesn't quite fit in. And at the same time, we are asking for systems change. So for change at really a large scale. Our first speaker is going to open up our anniversary looking at exactly the core idea of the IDGs, how personal transformation and systems transformation are connected. She worked in systems transformation for about 20 years, in climate change for 15. She's widely recognized for her expertise in bridging the worlds of business and sustainability, and also for making the efforts to promote the integration of sustainability principles into business strategies. She is one of only 25 full university professors at Harvard, and the author of several books, amongst others, Reimagining Capitalism in a World on Fire, which was also shortlisted the Business Book of the Year in 2020. You will see that whilst her voice feels a bit like a soft embrace, her insights are as sharp as they can get. So please welcome on stage Rebecca Henderson.
Katarina, thank you very much. Can I request a clicker? Thank you very much. Should have picked it up earlier, my fault. Hello. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. I think the IDGs may be one of the most important initiatives of the last 20 years, possibly of this 50. But I didn't always used to think that. And so I want to tell you a little bit about how I came to believe this and why I think it might be true. So I'm a professor at Harvard, but I'm also a person. And, oh, and I'm really hot. I wondered about the jacket. I grew up in England. And some of my earliest memories, particularly in my teenage years, are of wandering in the woods around our house. My parents' marriage was tumultuous. They were enacting most of the pathologies of the 60s in the house. So I spent a lot of time outside. And I became a literal tree hugger. I'm someone who walks up to trees and hugs them. But I decided that was all very well, but lying in trees and admiring the sunlight coming down through the leaves was not going to pay the rent, or was not going to prevent what was happening to my mother happening to me. So I decided to study engineering, MIT, economics, Harvard, and I became a professor of business at the MIT Business School, where I studied change. And in my spare time, I hiked and kayaked and climbed and reveled in the natural world. But for most of that time, it did not occur to me that my passion for the outdoors might be connected to my day job, which was working with very large organizations trying to persuade them the world was really changing. I, for example, spent about a year of my life trying to persuade Nokia that Apple was a serious strategic threat. Not very successfully, as you know. But I worked with firms like that, with Motorola, with other firms nobody's ever heard of. I was the Kodak Professor of Management for a while, which was embarrassing when they went bankrupt, and it's complete coincidence that that's the year I went to Harvard. About 15 years ago, now it's nearly 20, I saw Al Gore's movie, An Inconvenient Truth. And it really crystallized things for me. My brother was a freelance environmental journalist. He'd been sending me the science on climate change. And energy companies had been showing up in my office asking about transformation. And so the evening after the movie, I went back to my desk and I emailed everyone in my contacts list, something I've not done before or since, and told them we had to do something. And I've spent every year since then trying to do something. 15 years ago, I was recruited to Harvard to help start their initiative on business and the environment. I launched a new class called Reimagining Capitalism, Business and the Big Problems, that became the fastest growing elective in the Harvard Business School's history. And I wrote a book called Reimagining Capitalism in a World on Fire. So for 15 years, I thought that this was going to be relatively easy. Climate change is, as these things go, not such a hard problem. 3% of GDP, we'd started 20 years ago, gradually decarbonizing. We'd be there by now. A much easier problem than, say, inequality or racial injustice, which are really, really tough. Not that we shouldn't work on them, but I thought climate change was the easy one. And then in April of 2020, anyone remember what was happening in April of 2020? No, it was the second month of the pandemic at Harvard. We were all at home. My book got launched, and I thought it would disappear completely. But it turned out that April 2020 was a great month to launch a book called Reimagining Capitalism in a World on Fire, because the world was on fire. And suddenly everyone wanted to be on Zoom. Do you remember that? Like everyone leapt onto Zoom. I did seminars with 15 and 20,000 people. It was wild. It didn't last. But for those brief few months, I was hot. And then for another year or so, it kept up. I was doing 3 or 4 Zooms a day, talking to the Far East, to Africa, to Europe, to South America, to people in finance, to people from all kinds of sectors. And it was an author's dream. But, there's something about talking to thousands of people and watching them sit back in their chairs and go, well, Professor Henderson, you're probably right. We should do something. I wanted them to jump out of their chairs and run out of the room screaming. I wanted them to reorient their entire business models around climate. For years, I'd written and taught in this case. I knew the money in this area. I knew the money was there. I knew it could be done. And I could see on screen it was going to be too slow. And so I lost hope. Has that happened to anyone in this room? Yeah. I was leading a teaching team of 10 to teach 1,000 students. My class had gone mainstream. The dean had asked me to take it into the first year. And I burned out in despair. It actually didn't feel that bad. What it felt like is, I just can't do this anymore. I just can't do it anymore. It's not going to work. It's too slow. And so I took 2 years off. And I want to tell you the story of what I came up with in those 2 years and why I'm back on stages. and why I feel hopeful, and why I think the IDGs are one of the most important initiatives in the last 20 years. So, let's start with 4 narratives, 4 ways of talking about global heating. So the first narrative is, that's not great from a slide point of view, but we'll be mellow about it. Okay. That's fine. It's fine. The first is techno-optimism. You know techno-optimism? I gave 15 years of my life to techno-optimism. We can do this. I'm an engineer and an economist. I was at MIT for 20 years of my life. We can do this. No problem. We can hold global warming to 1.7 degrees C. This is the En-ROADS model from a crack team at MIT. All we need to do is, let's see, increase energy efficiency and electrification and transportation, remake our buildings, stop deforesting, start reforesting, drop methane emissions, you name it. If you don't know this model, it's public access. Just put En-ROADS into your browser. You can pull it up. We can do it. 1.7 degrees C. We can reimagine capitalism. I have a book. It's a reasonable book. I believe everything I wrote in it, pretty much. Decarbonization is potentially a huge financial opportunity. There are at least 5 business models. At Harvard, we wrote more than 300 cases. We keep writing them on how you can make money and address global heating. No problem. We got this. Firms can have system-wide effects. This is summarizing a 320-page book, but just let me know. Happy to send you a copy. Create shared value. Build cooperation. So this is individual firms do what they can. They work out that you can get some way this way, but you really need to work together, that if everyone in industry addresses this problem, you make real progress. If we can rewire finance, change the metrics, persuade the financial people, anyone in the room? No. They're unfortunately hugely, hugely important, yes. Yes, if we can persuade the finance people that destabilizing the world is really a bad idea, and that it's a systemic risk that can't be diversified away, huge effects. And oh, by the way, we could rebuild our institutions, rebuild trust in government. We must have efficient government. We must have government setting the right kinds of rules. But it can be done. And the book is filled with examples and stories, and I suspect some of you could write the chapters. We've already made tons of progress. This is the coal industry in the United Kingdom, a concrete example of an economy transitioning away from a fossil fuel. Price of batteries has fallen by 97%. You know renewables are at levels even I, a professor teaching technology strategy at MIT, did not believe was possible. In many parts of the world, renewables are cheaper than coal. And average per capita carbon dioxide emissions have flattened. Fantastic, yes? Fantastic, fantastic. So that's our first narrative, techno-optimism. The IRA, Industrial Recovery Act, the largest single government investment in decarbonization ever made. This is President Biden signing it. Here's the second narrative, despair. How many of you spend time with people under 27, 28, 29? How many of them are worried about the future? Are any of them delaying having children? Any of them thinking about killing themselves? There's something going on. There's something really going on. So we've got a whole bunch of people, young people in particular, because they feel less agentic, I think. But I know many adults in this place who are caught in despair. Why despair? Well, because the base case remains 3.3 degrees. And the base case includes, check it out on En-ROADS, very significant continuing improvements. So it's not as if these crack team of modelers hasn't realized that we're seeing a lot of change, even with the change. And of course, this is better news than 6. 6 was civilization ending. 3.3 is very nasty, but not as bad. But it's very nasty. Humanity has already blasted through 6 of 9 planetary boundaries. As I'm sure you know, the collapse of the biosphere is arguably a worse problem. How do we have to choose? We can't choose. But we have many ecosystems in what looks like catastrophic collapse. Public trust in government is near historic lows. Very hard to imagine how we do this transition without trust in government. And here I am in Sweden, and you have a right-wing populist government. And you don't want to be living in the States right now. You really don't. Very distressing. And this map, perhaps you've seen this. This is a heat map from an NGO called Probable. Oh, that was really bad. From an NGO called Probable Futures. Online, open source, check it out. This is expected temperatures at 3 degrees C. So this is our base case. 50% chance of getting it in 2050. I hate to tell you this, most of us will probably still be alive in 2050. Okay, so what is this? This is days above 28 degrees C. Anyone know why I chose 28 degrees C wet bulb? Wet bulb is 100% humidity. What happens to the human body at 28 degrees wet bulb? Anyone know? You can't process the heat. You die. 28 degrees wet bulb, you can't work outside. You can't spend more than a very short amount of time in full sun. And so these different colors, this red, the current forecast is for those regions marked in red to have between 29 and 365 days a year at 28 degrees wet bulb. One of the great puzzles of my life is how anyone can look at this map without screaming. Mostly internally. But look at this. Look at India. Anyone here from India? Mm-hmm. It doesn't look much better at 2.5 or 2. This is catastrophic. Look at Africa, look at South America, look at the southern US. This is 25 years away. This is hardly anything. My son is 28 years old. I remember vividly the time he was born. This is what we're heading for. So, optimism is premature and despair is useless, but you can see why people go there. So let's see if we can come up with some alternative narratives, yes? Okay. Narrative number 3. This is the one my students come in with. Radical change. Why do you want to reimagine capitalism? Let's throw it out the window. To which I reply, that's not a very good idea. But so some kind of major social movement that really changes the institutions of government, that wakes everyone up, that really gets us where we want to go, yes? Major change is possible. 50 years ago, the idea that a woman could be a university professor at Harvard, that's the highest honor that Harvard gives, totally off the cards. 100 years ago, I'm not voting. Major change is really possible. South Africa, everyone thought it would collapse in a bloodbath. It didn't. Gay marriage, trans rights, the idea that people with black and brown skins are, excuse me, just human beings with different colored skins. These are radical transformations. We know it can be done. But social change is complicated. Yeah? These are the Gilets jaunes, the yellow vests in France. You know, even here in Europe, the political pushback against investment in actions to reduce global heating. So, Why do I think the IDGs is one of the most important initiatives in the last 20 years? Because nothing is plausible. Despair is entirely rational. We're at a very difficult moment. But this is amazing. This is an incredible time to be alive. Because humans are really ingenious. And you want some good news? So here's the good news. You are not dentists. I have friends who are dentists. They're fine people. Looking after teeth is very well worthwhile, has significant effects on human health. But their chance of impacting global heating problem, small. Your chance, much greater. This is, I think, a great moment of challenge. But here's the good news, in addition to the fact that you're not dentists. The techno-optimists are not wrong. We have the technology, we have the resources, we know what needs to be done. This is a solvable problem. And the social movement? Oh yes, it's coming. I don't know when or where, but I promise you it's coming. So we've got the ingredients. All we need is the courage and the skills to make it happen. So that's why we need individual transformation. I'm sorry, I don't think I'm doing it. This is something I would not have imagined possible 10 years ago, that I would put individual transformation on a screen in public. I've been friends with a couple of my colleagues at MIT, Otto Scharmer and Peter Sankey. You know them? So I've known Otto and Peter for years, like 30 years. And I always thought they were kind of interesting, but I thought they were weird. And they were talking about this kind of cultish thing that was happening off at the side, and I was doing the economics and the engineering and speaking to the finance people and this kind of widdly, individual transformation. But there's nothing like burning out in despair to change your mind. It really isn't. What did I do with my 2 years away? I went on a retreat a month for 2 years. That's not everyone's route, but for me, silent retreat was fantastic. Oh my goodness. So, I think it's okay. I think, thank you, we need to balance Homo economicus with Homo IDGus. So, you know Homo economicus, right? The trouble is Homo economicus has become a self-reinforcing paradigm, right? If people are told this is what they're like, and this is how they're managed, and this is how they're constrained, they start to act this way. You're welcome to have copies of these slides, please. I'll send them to the organizers, and you're welcome to have them. What we need, of course, is Homo IDGus. Focuses on relationships, open to self-doubt, sees people as human, as cooperative, values flourishing in connection, focuses on the whole. This is what we need. We have a massive collective action problem and a massive short-termism problem. That's why the despair seems so real, because people say, but humans will never act together. Humans will never focus on the long term. And it is not true. Humans can work together. Humans can focus on the long term. We're hardwired to do it. All we need to do is open up space and train people and teach them. And I think it will take fire. Indeed, I think it is taking fire. One of my students in her term paper for me this semester was doing a field project in Tanzania. And she said to me, Rebecca, about those IDG people you mentioned in class, the middle school teacher I'm working with said to me, have you heard about the IDGs? It's out there. It's out there. lots of research to suggest that managing this way doesn't reduce and will probably increase performance. Happy to give you the underlying research. Individual transformation could change everything. We have been running on a model, this is techno-optimism, where government and capitalism fixes everything. But of course they can't without social and political movements. And of course, social and political movements cannot operate if people do not have the courage and the strength to hold what's happening and move forward. So individual transformation greatly increases the chance of social movements, puts pressure on government, and of course, this is you, changes business. If I had more time, I'd tell you about my new course. I will give you 3 sentences of highlight. First, interdisciplinary across the whole university. Second, all over IDG, everyone does a personal practice 15 minutes a day, every day. We open the class with meditation and Tai Chi. We do personal listening in every class. We close with singing and poetry. And in between, the students teach each other what business can do, what government can do, what social movements can do, and from my divinity school students, love them, what a connection to the deep parts of ourselves can do. And they learned, none of them had the whole picture. They learned that all that weird stuff I was doing with them, it made them feel much better. It made them a community. It gave them hope and courage. And they learned that they cannot fix it. There's a lot of suffering coming. They cannot fix it, but they can act. And they can act with joy and hope. So it's pretty amazing. So let me close by saying, happy birthday, and thank you very much. Just a second. I need to keep you with me. Rebecca, I'm so happy you're not a dentist. You are a professor at Harvard, but you also shared you're a tree hugger, and you very much just proved you're a person. How does it feel to talk about the things that you just talked about to us at Harvard? When I first launched my course, I was really nervous. I can't tell you how countercultural this is at Harvard. And I've never taught a course like this before. I just used to teach, straight techno-optimism. Here's the cases. Here's what we need to do. Just do it. And 2 things. One is I sent the syllabus to a lot of my friends because I figured, hey, what have I got to lose? This is what I'm doing. It's kind of out there. And a few people got back to me and said, well, Rebecca's very, very interesting. But I would say about 3/4 said to me, I'd like to take the course. I was amazed. I think there is so much appetite for this out there. And the students. I mean, I can't tell you how much they enjoyed this. So now I have students from all over the university. When I first taught Reimagining Capitalism in a World on Fire, it was 28 students, and next year it was 350. This is dangerous, but I think next year might be 500. I mean, it's really striking how much appetite there is for this. 500 plus a full room of people here and online. I think we all want to join your course as well. Thank you so much. Please give it up once more for Rebecca Henderson. Thank you very much. After this type of input, it might help us to actually take a moment to digest this. And I would like to say a few more words on the person who's going to help us do so. You've seen her on stage before. She's a Swedish, Finnish, Karelian singer-songwriter and multi-instrumentalist. And in her music, she combines different influences from folk, pop, and neoclassical music. Her songs are full of personal storytelling, where she talks about minority culture and about the relation between humans, animals, and the environment. She's also a researcher, and as a researcher and artist, she speaks publicly about the role of art in climate action. The song that you are about to hear is a modern chant about moving and being moved by the fire within and around us. It speaks about visualizing a world where community is at its core. It was released in 2023 as the first single of her album From Summer to Spring, and it might be the only song existing that combines English with the endangered Karelian language, Livi. When I first heard her song play here today, it immediately transferred me back to the IDG Summit in 2022, when we also had her on stage, and I remember how her music to me felt like diving into the vast universe. So maybe it will feel similar for you now as you take a moment to digest, and please give it up for Kieli and her song Palavu.
I see you through windows you are not see through. The city, these rules weren't written for you. Frozen between two poles. The fire within will keep you warm, and you know what to do. Palavu, palaga bolta, lähtelike. I see you beyond words, you are not cursed. In this world you can be seen and be heard. Frozen between two poles. You'll find your way when you move, and we're right beside you. Palavu, palaga bolta, lähtelike hel. Palavu, palaga bolta, muuta maailmu. That fire in your heart, that's where everything starts. Let the good begin. Let it wash over everything. That fire in your heart, that's where everything starts. Let the good begin. Let it wash over everything. Palavu, palaga bolta, lähtelike hel. Palavu, palaga bolta, muuta maailmu. Palavu, palaga bolta, lähtelike hel. Palavu, palaga bolta, muuta alahabu hua.
Thank you so much, Kieli. We usually overrate what we can do in a week and underrate what we can do in a year, let alone 3 years. Quite a lot has happened in the past 3 years, and a lot of people, organizations have joined the IDGs on their journey. If you know the person who's going to step on stage next, you know that if we are going to follow his visioning, a lot more will happen in the years to come. Visioning is a strength of his, and another IDG strength is complexity awareness. And I think we need a lot of this if we really want to make this happen. Please welcome on stage the Executive Director of the Inner Development Goals, Jan Artem Henriksson.
Yeah. And hello, everyone. How to follow that act after Rebecca, Elin is almost impossible. And it was me who complained to Rebecca saying, you know, we've been spoiled with having ministers, Minister of Education twice opening our summits. And because of a right-wing party being in our government, it's more difficult now. And we see the right wing blowing in many countries around Europe. And how do we balance, how do we stay on track, I think is a huge challenge. And we are on a journey of co-creation. Everything we do, we try to reach out to you and co-create with you. And we have some tech issues today, but I think we'll overcome, as this is a typically technical challenge and it can be solved with some brilliant minds behind the desk. The much more complex challenge is how to bring the power of inner development to the global community and global challenges. And I think this is difficult for several reasons, because we are also in Sweden one of the most secular countries in the world, where we're so rational, we're so aligned with rationality and modernism that sometimes even myself, I get a reaction like, oh, is this too much? Like how we are afraid of the humanistic side and sometimes of the human potential. And I think we're afraid of the potential within us sometimes as well. We're not embracing and stepping into our full power and what we can do as individuals and communities. We have a vision where inner development is helping us to unlock. We're never going to come to this utopic world when everything is fine. I don't think this will ever happen. This is not my vision, at least. But I think we can do better. And I think inner development can help us. I also think that our mission at becoming a global community has surpassed any of the dreams that I had. And I will tell you a little bit about what has been happening in the last years and where we're going. And I hope you can stay with me for a few moments. So as Katarina said, exactly 3 years ago, we released the framework open source, and it's never going to be done. It's not like, yes, we found it. It's just a mirror of a global dialogue on what skills are needed. And it's also just a language so that we can collaborate between different organizations and between different governments and have a shared language, just like we have with SDGs. We have decided, most of you know this, to give us another year to really do this global dialogue and include continents where we have not been as successful, both in Africa and Asia, where we could get better at working with getting more people into dialogue and working with updating the framework. So we hope to launch it in 2025 and hopefully the next in 2030. So each 5 years or so, we think could be a reasonable pace to update the framework. And Fredrik Lindenkrona has done a tremendous job. Just give a big applause for this fact. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our strategy. And the first strategy is a narrative shift. Because I think what we're doing is we're working on the discourse. we're working at reframing the problem, where the problem is not only out there, but it's an adaptive problem. And unless we have the motivation and the story that we need to work with culture, with humans, with shifting the narrative, we will not be even close at solving it. I agree with Rebecca fully, and it's just so beautiful to follow your work and wisdom. The second part is we can't just have a story and narrative saying inner development is important. We actually have to practice. And I've done the same guerrilla work at Stockholm School of Economics. I've been teaching there for 10 years. Until Lars Strannegård came to the school, I was working against the school. I was afraid putting up my posters that people would see that it was me doing inner development at Stockholm School of Economics, that it would throw me out, honestly. So and Philip Goldman, who's been with me throughout those fears and dreams, knows how it is to go against the stream and how difficult it is to bring in practice to a very modernistic system. But it's possible. And now Stockholm School of Economics is one of the forerunners in inner development, building with a new president, and they're changing how they're working. They're inspiring other business schools. But the last is we can't stop here. We, of course, need to get it into structural change and into policy development. And I'll say a few words on all of these three long-term goals and objectives that we have been co-creating throughout the year. Thank you, everybody who's been involved. And the full presentation you will be able to find online as well. So regarding the narrative shift, we're doing a lot here. We wrote a white paper with some companies like IKEA, and iStub is mentioned with David here. And many actually picked up on this. Positive News, other places around the world has been featuring some of the work that we're doing. We continue to try to be a voice in reframing this narrative. Jamie Bristol, who is not here with us today, has been writing a beautiful article, Clicker, where we just sent it to Time magazine together with Paul Polman's team, who is incredible in doing this work. There are many signatories. Rebecca is one of them, who is saying, stop asking what should be done. Let us start by asking the question, why aren't we doing it? And an article like that, let's see when the time is right for us to get it out in a public discourse, will have a big effect. Also, Peter Becker, who is the CEO of World Business Council, Rodney and James, who are here, has helped to get several heavy lifters, researchers who are on board and telling the story on how this is a cultural challenge. The second part is communities of practice. We have more than 600 hubs around the world, which is fantastic. And it's a huge sorrow and pain to see the country, Ukraine and Russia, as a big black map, because this is also where I'm born. I'm born in one of the more dysfunctional systems globally. And of course, the question is, how do we bring that into practice? How do we leverage that? I want to tell a story that gave me a lot of hope in what we can do when we're not dentists. The story is us going to COP and with IDGs being able to meet, it's like a huge Almedalen, and we managed to meet Andrew Myrick, who is the Federal Chief Sustainability Officer in the White House, and to get his interest around the IDGs. And he has around 300,000 employees. And then he says, like, look, this is so interesting that inner development can actually accelerate the shift towards sustainability. Is there any other organization that we could talk to? And I say, IKEA is about the same size. And he says, great, will you hook me up? I said, yeah, of course. So we call IKEA and we say, would you be willing to speak with the White House? And give them some tips on how to work with inner development and all that. And they said, yes, of course. So the people from sustainability, the chief sustainability officer at IKEA, met up with their people, and they're saying, this is great. We've been only working with more electrical cars or vegan food. We can do a lot with inner development to accelerate. And we have a green light now at investigating. As you know, Costa Rica has been using the IDGs for quite some years. There are other countries, Wales, UK, who are starting to experiment. But if this is happening, and we have a confirmed session now on the 30th of September for federal officers on the White House to work with that, and they want to bring in it to the Greening Governments Initiative with 50 countries, Sweden being one of them. And this is how the systemic and structural change can happen when we build a community of forward-thinking leaders who are willing to collaborate across borders, who are willing to have a more long-term perspective than just what's in it for me, what's in it this year, but saying, wait, this is an important shift. This is our duty to do this, and start experimenting together and see what we can do. And if this happens, I do think that there is a chance of getting around 50 countries on board who have promised to become climate neutral or positive by 2050. So there are systemic leverages that are just incredible and that I think we could really, really use more. So many of you are coming from different organizations. And to do another little parallel here, I had a senior executive coming to me and said, Jan, when I found IDGs, I thought it's so great. And I brought it home and it's all shiny. And then I thought, okay, so how do I implement this? And then he said, and then I realized, oh my God, this is made in Sweden. I need to assemble it myself. So I think that there are as many answers to how to do this as there are companies. There are great examples with you around the table who have been experimenting and working with this. And what we can do is to connect the dots and also try to give a voice as we're growing. And we have quadrupled just the last year. We have more people, more staff to tell the story, to package the story, and to get it out and create the beautiful connections. What we're also trying to do is, how many here has been a part of a learning circle this spring? Around half of you. We're just launching and initiating a monthly learning circle for our partners, where we have thought leaders from around the globe who are willing to share either how to build a few skills, because you all have figured parts out, or how to work with a specific dimension. Like Rodney, who is sitting here in the audience very humbly, he actually teaches courses at Yale and how to become more courageous. And he is a courageous person. I've seen him do incredible stuff and really be a first mover to put himself out there. And not only living and embodying it, but how can we get our leaders, how can we get ourselves to be more courageous on the acting dimension? We will have Phoebe, who will be talking about the relating dimension, and we'll have a taste of that soon. And we intend to do this each month, where there is a thought leader for 40 minutes. Then you will have your own group with similar companies, a circle where you can talk and exchange thoughts, and then go back for a Q&A. And we intend to do this each month. And we're launching now together with some philanthropic organizations also a philanthropic circle, because philanthropy is very needed, but it's also many times very conservative. And how can we use the IDG framework and the inner to accelerate the use of the money that philanthropists put in to different projects? Okay, on the structural side, you have heard this. The foundation is coming. It will be done. We will be a foundation in an independent inner development goals foundation together with these organizations. We have a few more we're processing their entry point. And for those of you who have been asking for years and years, we will be launching on our website the theory of change. It took us about a year of co-creation to create it. Jamie Bristol has been brilliant in helping us facilitate the dialogue, but the whole IDG team and many of you who've been curious have been involved as well. I'll just run that through. You know our vision, mission, and the problem statement. What we have identified is 4 systemic leverages, as we call them. We're talking about why inner development matters so people can prioritize it, because since modernity, we've deprioritized the inner. How we understand inner development and not just see it as just meditation. Meditation is great. There is a lot of things we can do, and how we can advocate for it. How we can connect people and communities of practice. And it's still a very privileged sport. If we are to make the changes that Rebecca is speaking about, we really need to make it accessible. And this is a big challenge, but technology can help us. We've also identified some current needs. And of course, we think that this could be, the impact can be that we are more efficient with working with the Sustainable Development Goals as a complex and adaptive problem. We will invite you to join us and work with this and better this. This is our first draft, and we will be putting this out. But this is what we think also needs to happen when we work with governments and across governments. And we have several programs. Åsa Jarlskog in green there, please wave. She's been to Costa Rica. She just initiated the program today with the Being section for the Global Leadership for Sustainable Development. And of course, people from different countries and governments meeting and speaking about inner development. And some of these things are crucial. So, if you're curious and want to dive deeper into the co-creation with us, in September, again, we're going to have an all-stakeholder meeting. We had this half a year ago, a first one that Pontus initiated together with some other people from the hubs, where we'll be inviting all stakeholders, and we're inviting you now. It's only online. There will be different breakout rooms for working with the theory of change or with our branding policy as we grow. People say, okay, we are open source, but what does that mean? What Creative Commons license are you? And we said, we don't know. And you have to figure out. You're like, but it's open source, but can I add the sixth dimension? No, you can't. Then you have to write it. So we're in that process of trying to have a conscious lawyer who's helping us to have as little text as possible and making things as simple as possible, but still be clear on what you can and cannot do. That will be one breakout. And we'll be working on governance and how we can help the hubs grow and facilitate that. We'll also be working on the new brand of the IDGs as we step up to this. You know, the terrible twos are over. We're getting older. We're 3 years old. So we're growing up, and we need to get our game together. So this will all be happening in September, and of course in October at the summit, this is when we will be presenting all this. So the last few words from my end is we have 5 tracks that we're doing much more in co-creation with different organizations. The biggest news for this year, I think, on the summit is that we have the UNFCCC as a co-creator of transforming the systems we live in. So basically the people who knows most about climate and the UN Innovation Hub for the UNFCCC will be with us. They will be giving a keynote speech, and they will be working on that summit. Am I that much over? Is that Mike Bell calling? No, I think I have 4 minutes. We also will be doing building skills at large together with World Business Council for Sustainable Development and working together with them. They are some of our partners that are coming with us to the island to start planning that. A third organization is Life Calling. Catherine, are you here? There you are. We are collaborating with a beautiful foundation called Life Calling on AI and how can we become even more human in the world of AI. So there is some amazing things going on. We hope that we can get some other companies and friends, Blink, Blink, Google, are you here? If we can collaborate on the AI and many, many others. Please reach out if you're curious in what you can do. This is also the first time that we're allowing our partner companies to actually sponsor and collaborate on the summit. We wanted to keep it 100% clean the first 2 years. People have said, you're mad, you cannot just do a summit like that with just summit tickets. This is what we've been doing. Now we're opening up for deeper collaboration. Last news is we will not be in the City Hall because we're pushing it a year ahead. We're going to save the City Hall. It's a huge cost. So we're going to save that for the new framework launch. We have some other amazing, beautiful venues, and we have some other surprises coming up. So my last invitation is continue on this journey of co-creation. There is no way a small team of 20 people where few of us are full-time can do this alone. It's only together with you that we can do incredible stuff. We are trying to work as an ecosystem and create healthy ecosystems and islands. Bring that with you home, wherever you are, whatever your field is, what can you do where you are working?
let's see if we can make things simpler, because inner development, just like sustainability 20, 30 years ago, it's still an emerging field, and we need to simplify it. Let's dare to do that. Let's dare to invite joy and our humanity and music and meditation and our full self. And let's live as we learn. Let's do our best in practicing the IDGs, or inner development, because we're not about the IDGs, we're about inner development. This is just one way of working with it. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Jan, for giving us some updates on what has happened in the past 3 years and showing us where we stand now as this 3-year-old toddler. And as we said, we also want to look into the future. And for this, we have invited another special IDG friend. And some of you might have seen her already today in the morning in her masterclass. She is an imagination activist, a renegade scientist from Cambridge, and a systems thinker. She's also the founder of an organization called Moral Imaginations, where they advise and consult organizations and governments how they can use the power of imagination to make the impossible possible. I remember at the first IDG summit, she actually made us meet our relatives 7 generations from now. And I remember how touching that was for a lot of us. And I think last year at the summit, afterwards, she received hundreds of requests for collaboration. Every time I invite her on stage, I gently hear the voice of John Lennon in the background when she calls out, "Imagine." Please welcome Phoebe Tickell.
Hi again. Many of you were in the workshop this morning, so I hope you won't get bored of hearing about moral imagination. But we've got a couple minutes as they sort my slides. And what I was left with after Rebecca's beautiful talk was just this reflection. The systems change is personal. It's so personal. I think that's why the Inner Development Goals is so inspiring to me. And actually listening to her talk really took me back to being in Imperial College London in 2015. I'd graduated from Cambridge University and I was on a track to being a scientist, academic. That was really all I could see. But in between going to do research at Imperial, which is kind of considered like a cathedral of science and technology in the UK, it's really like they don't even do art subjects. There are no humanities, it's just science and technology. In between Imperial and Cambridge, I took a 6-month journey to Southeast Asia, where I discovered meditation and spent a lot of time away from my phone and had the space and time to really consider the deeper questions and issues, and had time to also reflect on the burnout I was already feeling from the Cambridge way of life, of doing, cramming for exams and focusing only on learning, heaps of information off by heart. And then I went to Imperial, where I started the fossil-free divestment movement and became radicalized as a climate activist, and was fighting against trying to get Imperial College London, an institution that is there for the future generations, for young people, to take their money out of fossil fuels. And it all boiled down after like months of campaigning and doing banner drops and playing dead in the lawn of this university. It all boiled down to this meeting with the finance director. And there I am at 22 years old, shaking with the adrenaline of this meeting, like, this is it, this is where we're gonna do it. And I sit down with him and we talk about this idea of stranded assets, that actually if we look to the future and we see where we're going, these investments are worth nothing. And actually, if you want to be morally aligned with being an institution there for future generations, then you have to put your money where your mouth is. And he kind of sat back and was like, we're never going to do that. It's never going to happen. the financial bottom line is what's important. And right now the investments are coming in. So the meeting was over. It was like a 15-minute meeting. And yeah, it just made me reflect on all of these different ingredients that all of you will have, your personal ingredients that led to your unique wake-up moment, that moment of actually this system that we're in no longer makes sense. And so as I'm reflecting on the third birthday of the IDGs, an organization that is so dear to me and actually has been such a huge part of the journey of Moral Imaginations too, it made me reflect on what if we started to celebrate the birthday of when we woke up to our true purpose and our true calling, and that wake-up moment where we decided to do something different. And it also made me laugh because I think all of us, the talk earlier made me chuckle a little bit because it made me remember how starting off on this journey of inner development at the beginning, I remember thinking, really, am I going to do this? Like everyone is going to laugh at me. Like if I really follow this calling to do this kind of work, everyone's going to think I'm a hippie. It's like, so just so many kind of parallels and similarities. And yeah, so anyway, that's what came up for me. That's what really came back to me is these journeys of systems change. This is what systems change looks like. It's unraveling of the current system. And it's also unraveling of our personal ideas of what is a good life? What does my career look like? I want to be respected. Oh, I'm going to be laughed at. Okay, I don't have a choice. This is what is morally true for me, and there's no option, there's no choice. And this is the seed of what led me to start this organization called Moral Imaginations. And I think it's a seed that exists here in this room, in many of you too. I guess like this work, the work of inner transformation, the work that is so intangible, it's so hard, it's so hard to grasp. And yet there's never been a time when it feels more existential. We're really on that exponential curve, picking up from Rebecca's talk, we're on that exponential curve of technological, rapid change and impact. And in a way, like the larger our impact is, the more important it is that we get into alignment with what kind of impact we're having. So, technological blurring between the human and the non-human and AI and virtual reality and all of these trends are speeding up. And the people behind those trends are certainly not the people who are practicing inner development and relating to the more than human world and meditation. And so on this journey of trying to decide, what am I going to do with my life, given that actually science and technology doesn't have the answers, activism clearly isn't working, fighting against the system as it is. And over this journey, I've been uncovering these truths, these unassailable truths, right, that you just don't even question when you're just going about your life in the system as it is. So the first is capitalism is working. It just needs to be tweaked. It just needs to be made a bit more sustainable. We just need a sustainability department. Now there is this rising consciousness that actually, even if every organization on the planet got a sustainability department or an ESG strategy, nothing would change. Nothing, like very little would change. What we're looking at is full-scale transformation. And we can be scared about that, or we can be in this sense of like a mighty adventure, as my teacher and dear friend Joanna Macy calls it. We're on this mighty adventure. We don't know where we're going to end up. The second is that this capitalist, extractive, life-destroying economy is all there is and all there can be. And, Mark Fisher and Slavoj Žižek famously says it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. And so imagination, we need to be imagining that there are other worlds and other realities that are possible if we don't want to slide into that despair. Then the next is about our human nature and organizing society. There isn't enough to go round. This engineered sense of scarcity, there's not enough to go round, and therefore we have to engage in these zero-sum games and rivalrous games, and somebody's always going to lose out at the bottom. And I think that's one of the things that gives me most hope, is I truly believe that we have enough resources for every human being alive on Earth to have a high quality of life. Like, wow, imagine if we actually do that. for the first time in human history, rather than the feudalist system of kings and serfs, or the current system of some people being richer than the richest kings and others not having a place to live. Imagine if this next 100 years we managed to get through the eye of this needle and every single person on the planet could live a happy, safe, fulfilling life, full of inner development. And the last is that we are, as human beings, greedy and selfish by nature. And this is a deep one to crack. And in the masterclass this morning, it was one of the dynamics that came up the most. One of the most heartbreaking kind of effects of capitalist modernity, I would say, is that deep-seated suspicion of other people, the mistrust. They're out to get me, they're competing with me, and I have to beat them in order to get ahead. I mean, it's one of the most destructive, and it's nothing to do with capital. It's actually the culture that has been created or has also birthed this capitalist modern culture and system that we're in. Just wanted to check, where is the timer's here? That's counting down, good. But I might need to locate the timer. And so this is one of the core frameworks. One of the things I love about the work I'm doing now compared to when I was a molecular biologist is the simplicity, but the power of the frameworks, that actually the solutions are not that complicated. And actually it's almost like a bit of a koan, like a Zen koan that we're presented with, because as many of the people here would say, like, we see the solutions, we see the reason that we have enough resources and intelligence, we have the answers, but we are not taking action. And so it's almost like, okay, there's an interesting, there's a kind of interesting thing to crack, nut to crack there, which is where the IDGs and my work comes in. This model is essentially one of moving from an industrial growth paradigm to a life-sustaining society. And an industrial growth society it doesn't just apply to capitalism. It can have the same in communism, socialism. It's about the deeper paradigms and worldviews and values and mindsets that are running underneath whatever the economic system currently is. It is a paradigm of constant extractive growth, and not just growth, but also growth of growth. So always speeding up the rate of growth. I said this morning, with a GDP that increases roughly 3% each year, I mean, a 5-year-old could tell you that that's not going to work. It's like, honestly not. It's like beyond imagination that we think that that's somehow going to end well for us and for future generations. And so this model, this is the three stories model from Joanna Macy's work. And we get people to focus in on, what does business as usual look and feel like? And where can we actually see these other stories around the great unraveling, which in a way are a bit like the techno-optimism story and the despair story. Business as usual is what we hear from businesses, academics, politicians. Everything is fine. The system works completely correctly. We just need to tweak it a little bit. Progress is good. And we'll just have the new technological innovation in a moment anyway. So no cause for concern. Nothing to see here. Let's carry on as it was. Let's not change anything radically, because I have investments in this current system. So why would you change that? The great unraveling. This is the story that's told by independent journalists, by activists, by me at 22 at Divest Imperial. Everything is a disaster. We have to fight the floods, the famines, the never-ending list of the species that are going extinct, like this absolute doom and disaster story. It's also very powerful. And if we get stuck in that, then nothing new can be created. It was one of the reflections that Extinction Rebellion had in the UK, was they had these demands around what they wanted the government to stop doing. But actually, the story of, okay, but what next? What if we did stop this current system? What would that new system and story actually look like? There was very little around that. There's a beautiful quote by the author Don DeLillo, which I reference a lot, which is, longing on a large scale is what makes history. Longing on a large scale is what makes history. And these moments of change in the last 100 years, like the civil rights movement, like getting a man on the moon, although I would agree with the civil rights movement that actually if we put half as much funding and effort into solving homelessness as we did to get a human being on the moon, we might be in a very different society now. So it's really about our choices, and it's about our imagination, and it's about our will. It's not about resources. It's about connecting to what is right and taking action. And last but not least, we have this story of the great turning. And that is where longing comes in. That is where the action of the imagination activists that we are helping catalyze and activate around the world, that's where they come in. This is a new form of activism, rather than fighting the old, a kind of activism that is about helping people envision and long for, and also create images and stories around what kind of world we would absolutely just be ecstatic to live in. And so keeping that alive, and actually, especially young people, where there is so much despair about the future, actually being able to come together and see that the future is here already. It's just not evenly distributed. And we can keep on imagining how things could be different. So the IDG's framework, this work feels so important because it's these qualities that you see here: creativity, appreciation, perspective skills, sense-making, presence, self-awareness. These skills are what are going to help us both in the dying and the hospicing of the system that we're in currently now, which is no longer working. It's going to be painful. It already is. There are many deaths in this larger system, whether that's a death of a hope or a dream for one's own life, or the actual destruction of a lot of the things and places we feel we hold dear. But these skills are also going to help in that birthing process and allow us to collaborate where we might usually compete and mistrust, and allow us to be creative and hone our presence and hone our ability to take action. And together with the IDGs, we were talking this morning with somebody in the workshop about how these two kind of modes of work and these two capacities of moral imagination and inner development can come together, because moral imagination, I'm going to go here, provides a little bit of the compass of what is that world that we want to move towards? What is that new paradigm? What is this shift in worldview? But without actually having the capacities to engage in that kind of imagining and engage in the action that is needed, imagination alone is not enough. So together we have this compass, perhaps, that we need right now. And back to what is moral imagination? I mean, most of you will know by now, especially if you were there in the morning, but it's imagination on behalf of the welfare of the whole. And I just defined this as imagination to enable people to recognize their own moral place in the world and have the courage to speak up from that place of what is true, what is right, what is needed. And when I talk about moral, I don't mean a set of rules declaring what is wrong and right and a kind of punishment if you're wrong. There are certain ideas that we associate with the idea of morality, especially due to religion and some of the connotations of that. When I talk about morality, I mean increasing a sensitivity to an innate morality that is already here in how we live together, how we relate to the natural world. What does it mean to live in right relation? And how can we use imagination to make a very different set of choices by bringing in the outside world? And so over this last 4 or 5 years, this model has emerged. This is the model that we work with. These 6 widening circles: the self, bringing in the past and ancestors and our lineages and our ecologies; community, who is not in the room, who else could be in this conversation, expanding these widening circles away from the kind of individualistic view that we've been sold as what it means to be a human being, that you are just this body. No, you are ancient. You are actually mostly bacterial cells. You're actually more bacteria than you are human. You are intricately linked to a chain of life that if we go back long enough, billions of years, we reach actually bacteria. Again, hang on, bacteria are kind of taking over the world. No, we come from we are descended from non-human species, and this lineage will go on into the future. And something I find incredibly powerful is to think that if we humans started as bacterial cells, started as these little cells and became humans, and this is where we got to now, then what about all the non-human creatures around us? What is their evolutionary journey, millions or billions of years from now? And if we, as human beings, are stopping their evolutionary paths, what are we doing to that evolution, to that potential, to that possibility? What if there had been an irresponsible species like ours alive billions of years ago who had stopped our path to be able to be here today as human beings? So I just wanted to seed that or plant that with you, the immense responsibility we have to preserve life on Earth and future life and future generations, because we don't know what the future holds and where they are headed. I'm going to just skip through this because I know we only have about 5 minutes. If you want to take a picture of this, you can always refer to it later. But these are our 10 mindset shifts of moral imagination that we work with and that we worked through this morning. And I guess what I'll just say is people's reflections were that often they feel like they are embodying these changes, these shifts from short-term thinking to long-term thinking, from seeing nature as a resource to nature as a stakeholder and a shareholder, and actually seeing ourselves as nature as well, or moving from competition to generosity, reciprocity, trust, hierarchical leadership to sharing power. This is the compass. This is what our research has found. These are the qualities that we, if we move towards, could embody a life-sustaining society. And what people shared is that actually, we are all on a journey of trying to embody this new way of being, to actually bring about this life-sustaining society. And we can think that we're very far on the journey and then suddenly realize that we're back again. So, suggesting a 3-year strategy or, seeing nature as a resource again. It's not a linear journey. It's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. And so it's so important to have compassion in this time. None of us have the answers. All of us are on a journey with this, and nobody is perfect. Nobody is embodying this new system. Otherwise, we would already be there. And this was just a very brief piece that what's exciting, I guess, in the IDGs and what we're finding in Moral Imaginations is that suddenly, it's only 3 years since the IDGs started, only 4 years since Moral Imagination started. Last year, we worked with the British government to bring an interspecies council. That's a decision-making method where people from the government took on a non-human species in an imaginative role-play workshop and spoke on behalf of the reeds, of the river, of the fox, of the oak tree. And at the end of that workshop, here's a quote from somebody this was from the Department of Environment and Food and Rural Affairs. This was a quote from the workshop. She was representing the reeds, the reeds at the side of the riverbank. And she said, "There's not so much of me as there once was. There's a lot of river to clean and not enough of me to clean it." There's been like a full-on transformation in a day to actually voice the more than human world and engage in this very radical, very imaginative process. And this gives me a lot of hope. And at the end of this process, 100% of the participants said that they think they think this method should be incorporated into decision-making in the UK government. So change is happening rapidly, much faster, I think, than many of us thought. So we've got 2 minutes, right? This timer says we do. Do we not have 2 minutes? Okay. I'll leave you with this portal. And I often show people this and say that actually this is a gift from me to you, because it's one of the core tools of an imagination activist. And actually, just by looking at this portal, there's an alchemical reaction that's happening in your neurons and the image, and you're actually being gifted this portal. And this is a portal to the future world where all your dreams and all the things that you long for have come true. It's a world that exists. You can travel to it in your imagination. And I encourage you to take this with you, have it in your pocket, and bring it out and speak to people about the future that you long and yearn for, because you will activate it in them. You will pass the portal on. So that's my challenge to you. Thank you very much.